In this week's video, we're making some survival arrows to go along with the survival bow that we made in a previous video. So in this video, we're making quick survival arrows. This is something that if you were stranded out somewhere, out in the middle of nowhere, have very limited supplies, that you could make this quickly without a lot of skill and without a lot of materials or time. So preferably we would use something like a river cane or some sapling from some kind of a hardwood. Of course, nothing really is perfectly straight in nature, so we're going to have to do some fire bending in order to get it straight to make the arrow. And it needs to be basically straight for a length of, maybe 30, 36 inches. Okay, right here's a little maple sapling. It's not great, but I think it's probably got about 30 inches of fairly straight wood. All right, here's another little tree that we're going to use. This is hazel. Looks fairly straight for quite a bit, at least 30 inches. So we're going to try that one as well. Okay, we've got our sticks. I actually have 3. I got 2 of the hazel and maple, 1 maple as well. And you want to use saplings. If it's dead and laying on the ground, it's going to be brittle and it's not going to work. 1/4 inch is about the thinnest that you want, and I know maybe this is 3/8. It tapers up to about 3/8. Somewhere in that neighborhood is where you want to be. So I've got a stump here that I'm going to burn out today anyway, so I'm going to light a fire against that, and we're going to try to straighten these. And of course, any of these things that I'm doing, this is just what I do and how I do it. I'm not claiming to be some kind of professional on this, and I'm not claiming to tell you to do any of this. This is all at your own risk if you do any of this sort of thing. Well, that fire is good enough to get started. So I want to go along here and just scratch off any little places where a new branch was starting. Try and just get it smooth. And I want to take off some of the bark, but I don't want to cut down into it very far. Yeah, I'll trim up the length later, but for right now, we basically want to get it smooth. I would suggest using gloves when you're doing this because it does get hot and you can get burned. But just to simulate a survival situation, I'm going to bend it without gloves. Just have to be very careful. Hey, just a quick reminder, if you don't want to miss out on future videos, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. We put out new videos every Friday morning. And sometimes you can hear a little bit of the fiber. You don't want to hear it cracking, but you want to bend it just to get it straight and hold it there. Let it cool. And you want to have roughly a 30-inch piece that's straight. That's why I say whenever we're looking for sticks that are 30 to 36 inches. That way we can trim it. Well, that's really hot. I'll just hold it further back, hold it where I want it to be. I'm going to move on to the next stick. This is maple. We'll try the maple. This is probably the worst area, so I'll start there. Oh yeah, nice and flexible. It's a little bit too hot to put my thumb right there, so I'm going to bend it this way, what I need it to be. Just hold it further back. Well, that's pretty good for the first try. As it warms, it wants to return. It's probably more like maybe even 1/2 inch back here, so I don't want to worry about going any further back. You're not trying to catch the stick on fire. You're just trying to heat it enough that it's very pliable, like that. And we'll just hold it, let it cool, and then move on down. And for our final piece of hazel, I'm going to actually take all the bark off. We'll see if there's a difference in bending. Even the ones with the bark on, I would remove the bark after they're bent straight, because you're going to need a little more carving work potentially. I can see pretty much where I want my tip to be, and I'm just going to carve a tip on the arrow right now. There's different things you can do with tips. You can try to make one out of stone if you have time for that. If you have anything metal along with you, a lid for a can. You see a lot of people on the internet take a lid for a can and fold it up, and that's great. You can do that if you have it with you or happen to find something, some thin metal like that out on the trail. But chances are, if you're making a survival bow and survival arrows, you're way out somewhere and probably don't have those kinds of things available to you. So what you're probably going to end up doing is just carving a good point on the end of your stick and then fire harden that. So you want your tip to be sharp and taper down pretty good, but at the same time, it can't be really, really super thin, so about like that. If it's too long, it'll be very thin on the end, so you don't want that to happen. If you have a really thick area, you can carve it down with your knife. You can't thin it too much, otherwise it'll damage the structural integrity of the stick. It won't have quite the strength if you take it down too much. You want to be careful to shave it down evenly all the way around, not take it all out of one side. So I would say that this stick that I have taken the bark off of ahead of time, it feels very wet in my hands, and as I'm heating it in the fire, when I want to bend it, it feels a lot hotter than the sticks that had the bark on yet. And of course, we can't forget to fire harden that tip. And what that requires is a little more toasting. It's going to be very hot. I'm not going to be able to really touch it. And we're not trying to catch it on fire or anything. We are just trying to dry it very quickly. And so that drying action, sort of toasting or drying quickly, will actually harden the wood on the tip. And we can probably touch it up a little bit with a knife if we need to, but you want to be careful not to do too much carving on it, otherwise you can carve off the hardened area. So that's our first arrow so far. That's the hazel, and I got it fairly straight, and then I started carving on it, and you want to bend it as much as you can to get it as straight as you can. After that, you can always work it down a little bit with a knife. You want to be careful to carve pretty much evenly all the way around. And you stop, look at it, turn it as you look at it, and you'll see where it's still not straight. You might have to bend it in the fire a little more, or take a little bit off. The very end I'm not worrying about. You can see how thick it is on the end, how much I've taken it down. Doesn't matter if the back is a little bit thicker, but it needs to be fairly consistent. I'm going to say this one's pretty good, and now I need to strip the bark off of the other two. So this is my maple stick, and just get started here. I want to be careful taking off the bark. You don't want to cut down into the stick too far initially. As far as debarking it, I don't really see any difference between this one that I've heated and straightened first and the other one that I debarked and then straightened. As far as the removal of the bark, I'm not seeing any difference. Well, the maple is carving up really nice. It's They're both good woods. Pretty much any hardwood would work for this. River cane is hollow, and so traditionally that's been used by Native Americans. So my stick is really flimsy right out here, so I'm going to find the place where I want to put my tip. It really gets bendy right about there, so I'm going to start carving to get my tip right about there. That way that's not part of my arrow. I'm going to kind of dig in hard to take that part off, and then just carve it up, and then heat treat this tip in the fire. All right, here's our second arrow. That is the one made out of maple. And the third arrow met with a catastrophic failure. So from here, I just need to cut my lengths. I've hardened the end on this, got it fairly sharp as well. It's pretty straight and looks pretty good. Yeah, well, it looks like to finish burning out my stump, I'll have to relight my fire later. But that's okay, because this is the more important task at hand. So basically, I have to decide where I want the end of my arrow. I think that's a pretty good length, right about there. And so I'm going to say that's maybe 30 inches long. Now for our hazel arrow, I have to decide. Put it about there. They're surprisingly close to the same length. I'm going to say they're within an inch. This is the hazel, this is the maple. Now we need to notch the back of the arrow for our nock. If you have a saw along, you can just saw into it. If you try to do it with a knife, you're going to end up splitting the stick a little bit. So basically, that's what I would do, is split the stick a little bit, and then we'll have to wrap it to stop the split from spreading whenever we're actually using it with the bow. Yeah, I'm just going to push the knife in a little bit and try to split it just a little. When you're working with a knife this close, you have to be very careful not to use too much pressure, because you don't want to slip and cut yourself. Gloves are preferred for this. There we are. I'm going to kind of chamfer these ends. As you can see, the split is coming down, so we'll have to wrap this. Now for the maple. The maple is going to be a harder wood. It might split easier. Might actually be able to carve that better. I start with a line and then try to widen it. So I'll go in beside and kind of slightly angle. Come on the other side. You know, you keep the whole blade sharp, but the back of the blade, I think, is best for smaller situations like this. It seems to stay sharper than other areas of the blade and is better for finer carving. There's a little more control back here. Yeah, just as I figured, I was able to carve that on the maple rather than splitting the stick. The softer hazel just tended to split, where the maple carves up nice. Alright, so the next thing our arrows need is fletching. If you have feathers, you can use feathers to put on. If you don't, a lot of survival kits have duct tape in them. So I'm going to use duct tape, at least on the one. So even though a lot of survival kits will have some duct tape in it, they don't typically have a whole lot. I have a whole roll with me. But a lot of them do have probably enough to put the fletching on this arrow. So you want to get some pieces roughly 4 to 6 inches. I'm going to say 4 is probably enough. It's going to be hard to show you what I'm doing here. See if I can do it backwards. We're going to fold this over, leaving about an 1/8 inch or so piece. See, there's a sticky 1/8 inch or so on the bottom, And then one end we're going to trim these. So we're going to set that somewhere that's pretty much clean. Don't want dirt to get on our sticky part. You're going to need another piece, approximately 4 inches. Fold it over, leaving roughly an 1/8 inch. And our third one made the same way. So far, they are of different lengths. I've been able to get them fairly close. But we do need to trim like a rounded area in here anyways. So the easiest thing to do is going to be to find a stick or log or something to use as a cutting surface. So I'm going to find my shortest piece, that's this one, and I'm going to work on it first. And I need a little place at each end, little tab sticking off, so I'm going to start by cutting this. And there's that sticky part. My tab needs to be that sticky, made out of that sticky part. That sticky 1/8 inch that we have. See, there's my tab. I need a tab at both ends. There, oh, there we go, I got through. Put those scraps in my pocket. And then you could curve this if you have the, you know, some kind of template or something that you want to make. But I find it easier to just make a line. And now I'll use this as a template for my next two. First thing I'm going to do is cut my tab on the next one. The back tab probably isn't going to matter as much. It doesn't have to be the same length. So it's this front part that we want to have pretty close to the same. So we want to be careful not to press it down, but we're going to put our knife here and at least score it. Now I have that angle, I can see where it's going to end up at. So now I can cut that notch. Alright, we'll start our third one. All this sticky stuff gets on the knife, makes it a little gummy. Put our first one back on, line up that back edge, line up the front, score it just to give us where that's supposed to be. So I'm going to put these on my arrow that's made of hazel. And when you put your fletching on, you want to pay attention to a couple of things. You don't want to have one on the same side that you're going to go past your bow on. So you have to think about where your string is going to be and place your first one. I'm going to say you want to be about 1 inch down from the end. And you want to watch that knock, like I say. So when you fold this over, it's going to not interfere with your bowstring. The second one I like to place directly right away as well. Okay, and now it's time to put our third one on. Okay, obviously I got one in the wrong place. The good thing with the tape is you can take it off and try it again. Now, of course, you peel it off and move it every time. It's not going to be quite as sticky as the last time because you're picking up little bits of whatever off of the stick. So you want to try to get it right. I think that's pretty good. Now I need to tear some short strips. We just need 2 really. Now I have a strip here, and it's maybe a little longer than what I need, but it'll work. I want to tape the front. And I have another strip, and of course the strip in the back you're going to want to be longer because of the split. So we're going to want that a little bit longer. And so this one we're doing this way. The next arrow I want to do with feathers. Alright, there's our end of our survival arrow. A little bit of duct tape to hold that split from splitting down. We also wrapped around the front to hold those tabs on the front. So that one's ready to fire. But first I need to get the other one put together. Okay, so I do have a couple feathers here. This one's a good size. This one's pretty big, so it is important that your fletching is roughly the same size. And so I'm going to trim these. Okay, there, my length is now right. Now let's see if I can split this. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to split that, so I'm going to have to just cut off this side. This one, just cut the end right here, and cut off the feathers on this side. Alright, the only other feather I'm able to find, it's not the same size, but we're going to make it work because, you know, that's all we have. And if we're trying to simulate a survival situation, you're just going to work with what you have. Like I say, these have all been so small, I haven't been able to split them. So, do like that. Check the length. Yeah, it's pretty close to the same. Alright, so now we have our feathers, and now we need a way to attach them. If you would happen to have some fishing line along, or some kind of thread, you have time to make some cordage out of stinging nettle maybe. What we're going to do in this situation is we're just going to use the duct tape because we have it. Because, as we said, we have some in this survival kit, and most survival kits will have at least some duct tape. So that's what we're going to use. So we need to watch out for the knock. We need to see where our little notch is in, and we're going to be careful about placement. We're not going to have a lot of option to move this. So I tore some strips of duct tape. We want the back to be about 1 inch down. Here's our first one. Here's our second one. Now it's just a matter of wrapping the tape. Alright, I think those are pretty good. Now we need to do the same to this back end. If we had some line, we could pull these apart and put line in through there. I'm bending the feather back this opposite way as I'm wrapping, hoping for it to stick out better. These two feathers I'm happy with. This one I'm not so much. There we are. Now if we had some fishing line to use or string, we could come in here in between and wrap in through the middle as well. So we have two kinds of targets here. The yellow one on the left is for crossbow or compound bow. So we're going to stand roughly 20 yards or 60 feet from the targets. And I want to try this one out with the feathers first. Missed. Sticks in the target for crossbow. That one did as well. So the tips seem to be fine. Seem to be pretty good. Are they broken at all?
No.
You'll notice the fletching made with duct tape is definitely not holding up. All the duct tape had to do was hit the edge of the bow just once and it ripped. Ooh, hit the shed. The feathers definitely fly better. I'm going to say that. The duct tape one definitely does not compare to the one with the feathers. Here, let's see it. Okay, so she missed and hit the shed, and that's what happened to the tip. It is fixable though, and it's not as bad as I would think. So the fletching on the duct tape, the one side just peeled back as soon as it scraped the bow. So that might actually be part of why it isn't flying right. So we're just going to pull that one off. But other than that, the other one definitely flies better. Who wants to try it? All right, fired at 20 yards. Let's see how far that went in. This is foam. Put your fingers right there. That's pretty good. That's the one that had a damaged tip. All right, let's see how far it went in this time. At least 6 inches. So the arrow with the feathers seemed to work the best. It had the damaged tip, but it was still burying about 6 inches into the target. The one with the duct tape, it seemed to be all right until that duct tape just rubbed the bow once and it just ripped it. It doesn't fly as well either. The duct tape, I don't know. They're both just as straight and pretty close to the same. There's not a lot of difference. The one with duct tape is a hair thicker, and that's the hazel. The maple has the feathers on it. So I think we'll end the video here. And if you didn't see our survival bow video, go back and check that out. All right, thank you. Uh-oh, what did I do? All right, we're ready to fire the arrows now. So if you've seen our previous video about the survival bow, it's maybe a month ago that we made that. That's what I'm going to be using. One in the target, one off. If you find any feathers, actually see if you can find a feather.
You want some feathers?
Yeah, I want some feathers. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We put out new videos every week, every Friday morning. And if you'd like to receive notifications when we do upload the next video, hit that notification bell. And check out our channel. We have several videos just like this one or very similar. We do various things including hiking, biking, boating, fishing, builds of various kinds, mostly outdoor activities. Some homesteading is thrown in there as well. This channel is for the experience. We do these things for the experience of doing them and to show others how you can do it too. We try to be fun and entertaining while being educational all at the same time. Sometimes these experiences are done for the first time, and other times they're things that we do all the time. Sometimes we do things just for the fun of doing it. Thank you. We'll see you on the next one.